We are live. Hey, everybody, Chuck Holton here. And I'm just going to do a quick live on this because there's not a ton of information coming out that is coming out into the public domain yet. And but I wanted to make a couple of comments about this because, I want to explain to you why I thought it was important to come on and talk to you about what's happening with this plane crash. So first of all, there was another plane crash tonight. After the first commercial airliner crashed in since 2009, just yesterday. What night before last, I guess. Yeah, night before last, and so everybody's still kind of reeling from that other plane crash, and now a plane has crashed in Philadelphia, northeast Philadelphia, into a residential area. And it is there's a bunch of video coming out about it. It was an air ambulance. It was an LJ-55, which is a Learjet, and fair. I wouldn't say it's super old, but the last one was made in 1987. So I guess, yeah, you could say it's pretty old. And so I want to talk about this. They know there were two people on board, and that there were multiple casualties on the ground. We don't know exactly how many because this is an evolving situation, and it is likely to. I mean, they're still treating this. It only happened like an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. Hi, Jimmy. You're from Philadelphia. Your cop cousin said it almost hit homes, but did cause fire, but could have been worse. He's on the scene now. Great. Let us know if you hear anything else, Jimmy, from your cousin. And so the plane was not on fire as it came in. There are, again, videos out that are showing the crash. One of them is a Ring video. And I'm going to try to put these videos up over at chuckholton.com. But on the Ring video, you can see the thing coming down. And actually, yeah, I guess it was a little bit on fire. Now, hard to say. Let me just look at this again. It looks like a airplane. I mean, it looks like a missile streaking out of the sky. And it does look like it was on fire actually as it came down. So that could be a major problem. Christina, I said it was an air ambulance. And they say the news I'm seeing out of Philadelphia says there were two people on board and more people that were wounded or perhaps killed on the ground. They're treating this as a mass casualty event, and there are hundreds of first responders and law enforcement that are on the scene right now. Roots says that Ring video looks like they were moving real fast. Well, it is a Learjet. Those things go over 500 miles an hour. And it was, according to flight radar, from what I can tell, that thing was descending at about 11,000 feet per minute. That is very fast. I saw, as soon as it happened, they announced it on Newsmax, and my friend Blaine Holt was on there, and he said, hey, we have to reserve judgment here because that thing did not even look like an airplane. It looked like something else, which could possibly, I mean, he said it looked like ordnance. Ordnance meaning a missile. Now, obviously, a missile coming down in Philadelphia is spectacularly unlikely. And yeah, it just happened, Lisa, about 2 hours ago. And there are some pretty terrible videos out of people that are on fire, running around. Obviously, this thing hits the ground. It's got fuel on board. It's going to create a big fireball, and that it did. Now, some people are Faithful Anon says 6 people were on the plane. Other people were saying only 2. The interesting thing is their flight out of Philadelphia does not show up on flight radar tonight. So I don't know what that's about. But this plane has been all over the place in the last 24 hours. They're based out of Miami. Yeah, actually, you can go to this is owned by a company called Jet Rescue. And if I go over here, I can maybe put jetrescue.com there. I'll put that in the chat. And so it belonged to Jet Rescue. And this thing, no, Ruth, there wasn't 16 people on board. This plane doesn't even hold 16 people. Again, it's a Learjet it's an LJ55. It holds two crew and 10 passengers, according to the page that it has on Wikipedia here. Again, this is a fairly old jet, what they would call like a business jet. And the first one was built in 1979, the last one in 1987. There were only 147 of these made. So if there were 6 people on board, I have not seen that. But again, this is changing very quickly here. But what I wanted to point out here is that this thing has been flying all over the place. And just in the last 24 hours, it left Miami, it went to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and then it went from Port-au-Prince to Fort Lauderdale, and then Fort Lauderdale to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And obviously from Albuquerque, it somehow made its way to Philadelphia. So this thing has been flying a lot. Now, I'm not going to start to make unfounded claims. And this is the reason I wanted to do this live, because almost immediately on social media, we're seeing people speculating all kinds of crazy things. One guy I saw said, this has to be a cartel hit. Well, no, not likely. This air ambulance, actually, there's a picture of it on their website. You can see the XA-UCI, and that's the plane right there. That's the like the tail number, XA-UCI 55. Now this thing, I flew helicopters, so I was not a jet pilot or anything like that, but my son works on Gulfstream jets, and the amount of maintenance that these things require is absolutely crazy. So I think Connie's asking, how many flight hours can this plane have before it's grounded for maintenance? None. I mean, this thing is needing to undergo maintenance constantly, and it is any kind of aircraft, whether that's a helicopter or a jet, has to have a ton of maintenance done on it. So I worked on several different types of helicopters when I was in college, and I flew OH-58 Scout helicopters. And I can tell you that, even in the military, every single nut and bolt on that helicopter that I worked on had an expiration date. Now you'd say, like, why would a bolt or a nut have an expiration date? Because it's made of metal. Like it's not like it goes stale or something. Well, that's true. However, what they have done is they've figured out the expected life cycle for every single part on these aircraft. And that life cycle, let's say that for whatever part, let's just take any part as an example, the headlight, okay? The light on this thing is supposed to last for 2.5 years. So what they do is they back that off, and about 80% or 70% of the time to expiration for that light, they replace it anyway, even if there's nothing wrong with it. And that was true down to the last nut and bolt. They actually, on my aircraft, if there was a screw or a nut and you pull that thing off, you'd be like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It didn't matter. You had to throw it away and put a new one on there and mark it off on the list. So you can buy one of these Learjet 55s for less than $1 million, which for a business jet that holds 10 people is pretty cheap. But the maintenance on a jet that was manufactured between, in the late 70s or early 80s is going to be absolutely massive. Now, I'm not even going to speculate that it was a lack of maintenance that caused this crash. We don't know. And I'm getting ready to do a video. I'm going to be doing a video here in the next couple days about Russia's asymmetric warfare on the United States and Europe, where they have just in the last few months been caught trying to bring down aircraft. Now, don't hear me speculating that that's what happened here. I'm not saying that. We have no idea what happened here. We will likely find out before too long. Going back to the accident that happened 2 days ago at Washington Reagan National Airport. I mean, I was on my way to Washington to go to to Dulles Airport when this happened. And look, I've flown out of there a lot. And that corridor down the Potomac River right there is one of the busiest air corridors on planet Earth. And we're already hearing, I was saying that I did a live for CBN right after it happened. And I said this then, I'll say it again now, that air corridor was an accident waiting to happen. There's just so many aircraft flying in and out of there. It's just super, super busy. The helicopter air corridor that they have established down the Potomac River goes right underneath the landing pattern for that particular air runway at Reagan National Airport. And there's only when those planes are coming into land and there's helicopters there, I mean, think about it. It's a big sky out there. It's not super likely that if you're going to come in and land on that particular runway, I think that was, what do they call that? Runway 27 or 30, something like that. Yeah, I think it was runway 30 at Reagan National. If you're coming in there, what are the chances there's going to be a helicopter that's passing that exact spot at that exact same time? Well, not very likely. However, when you have hundreds and hundreds of aircraft landing every day and you have dozens and dozens of helicopters flying that corridor every day, sooner or later it is going to happen. And there is a plan for that. The plan was that the helicopter would fly at 200 feet and the plane would not fly below 400 feet at that spot. So there's a 200 feet of separation. Think about it. The next time you're on an airplane, watch out the window, look out the window and see if you can see another plane. See if you can find another plane in the sky. I guarantee you there are lots of planes in the sky almost always, if you're flying over the United States, that you would be able to see with the naked eye if you knew they were there. But the sky is so big that it's just really hard to pick them out. If you happen to see a plane, if you're up in a plane and you look out the window and you happen to see another plane that's, like, let's say close enough for you to read the tail number, that's most likely a problem. I mean, because the planes are not supposed to be that close together. But when you're coming into land, it's a different story because all the planes and helicopters are all coming into the same place. Now, this VIP helicopter, as it turns out, was about 200 feet higher than it was supposed to be, 150 feet higher than it was supposed to be at that spot. And you might say, oh, well, it's the pilot's fault then. Well, let me just tell you something, folks. Having flown helicopters for years, it is very easy to accidentally go up an extra 150 feet. Like very quickly, you can do that. Because there's a lag, in the instruments and everything that you start to see your climb rate go up. But by the time you make an input to correct that, you could already have gone up 100 or 150 feet, no problem. And there's so many things that are acting on that aircraft. So wind, of course, right? But especially right there in the flight path, the glide path for aircraft that are coming into land, there are these vortexes that those planes leave behind as they go by that can grab your aircraft and throw it up or down one way or the other. I've had that happen where you come in behind an aircraft and you can't see this in the sky. Sometimes if you watch like on a war movie or something and you see a helicopter coming in to land, and as it comes in, you see like the smoke that it comes through start to do this behind it, right? That's called the in-ground effect. And as you get closer to the ground, the wind created by the rotor disc goes down and hits the ground and bounces back up and comes up and pushes the helicopter down. It comes around and it actually pushes their helicopter down. And so you have to adjust for that. So when you're flying a helicopter, there's no like straight and level. There's no such thing. And you can't let go of the controls in a helicopter, especially like a Black Hawk or something, and it glide. Like in an airplane, I don't know if you've ever flown a small airplane, but if you let go of the controls in an airplane, it just goes to flying straight and level, and it'll just fly straight and level until you take the controls again. Doesn't work that way in a helicopter. If you let go of the controls in a helicopter, you got all of the aerodynamics of a cinder block. You're going down. And every input you make in the helicopter controls does something different. It affects all of the other things. So if I pull a little extra power in on the if I pull up on the collective, that is going to skew my helicopter to the left because the tail rotor is going to spin a little bit faster. So if I put a little more power in, it's going to skew me to the left. So I have to make an adjustment with my feet to straighten myself back out. And that every single thing you do is going to affect everything else. And it's not quite that much for an airplane, but for a helicopter it is. So all of that to say that for a Black Hawk helicopter being flown on a training flight where most likely the person piloting it was the trainee, because the other guy that we know of in the aircraft had well over 1,000 hours flying that thing. Can the helicopter be remote controlled? No. I mean, they've experimented with things like that, but the military does not have a bunch of remote controlled helicopters. There are other helicopters, not Black Hawks, but there are other helicopters that can fly themselves to an extent, like a Dolphin or a Dolphin helicopter. You can punch in the grid coordinate where you want to go, and the helicopter will take off and fly there and then come to a hover over the spot you told it to go to, and you have to land it yourself. But Black Hawks don't really have that. There's not really such a thing. I mean, newer helicopters are going to have more things like this, but in older helicopters, they're not. I don't know exactly this particular VIP Black Hawk, whether it had upgraded avionics or whatever in it. But bottom line is, they were flying in a very tight space, and they just went higher than they should have. The plane might have been 50 feet lower than it should have been, and that's all it took. It was a terrible, terrible accident. I don't think there was um, some kind of conspiracy on that aircraft that crashed 2 nights ago. I've seen on social media that, oh gosh, there were Russians on that airplane, and so that this might mean that no, that's not. Look, that was the reason I wanted to do this live. Is you are going to hear people coming up with all sorts of craziness, and I would just reserve judgment before I would jump to any conclusions. Christina asks, what do you think about Trump's statement? The sky was clear and the helicopter pilot should have seen the plane. Well, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Look, it is hard flying at night under nods, under night vision, to differentiate how far away something is. So you might see a light, but you don't get a lot of depth perception when you're flying under night vision. And so if that plane, if the helicopter was too high, even slightly, and that plane was a little bit too low, that plane could easily get lost in all of the other lights that are around the airport. You can imagine all the lights that are going to be in Washington, D.C., right? And if you're at 200 feet, you're in some cases kind of looking up at some of those lights even. So it's not like you're way up high and all the lights are way down below like it is if you're flying in a commercial airliner. When you're flying at 200 feet, the treetops are 100 feet. So there are lights and you're flying down the river. So if you're 200 feet above the river level, AGL, above ground level, well, the sides of the river are higher than that. And so you might actually be looking straight out and seeing lights all over the place. Again, if they got a little too high and that plane was a little too low, it could have easily blended in. So, I mean, will the NTSB find out that, or, find that the trainee pilot who was flying that Black Hawk was at fault? Perhaps. But I don't think it was intentionally brought down or anything like that. Okay. Yeah, if you look at Plane Finder or if you look at Flight Radar and you see how many planes are in the sky at any given time, it is crazy. There are tons. Now, all of these planes have, anti-collision systems in them. And that aircraft, the American Airlines plane, would have alerted the pilots to pull up or dive if it saw that there was an aircraft coming right at them from the front. But it appears that this helicopter came kind of from the side when you see the most recent footage out of that. And so that system might not have picked up an aircraft coming from the side. The helicopter should have seen it, the helicopter's systems should have shown something. But those military helicopters are designed to be hard to see. And especially at night, you wouldn't expect that the plane would have seen that helicopter. And apparently there was some, there's a lot of stuff coming out about that accident, that there was only one guy that was in the tower dealing with both of those aircraft. Normally they would have a separate air traffic controller for helicopters and a separate one for the planes. This guy was trying to do both. So he was kind of overworked. Like I say, this is a known dangerous spot. And the day before, there was a plane coming in to land at Reagan National that aborted a landing for that very same reason, but it was during the daytime. And so he saw the helicopter and said, I'm not, I'm pulling off. And he waved off and went around and everything was fine. There were several warnings like that. And this is, I guess, what I wanted to point out as well. Most accidents are not accidents. Accidents get constructed by a series of bad choices, bad events that just take place, acts of God, whatever. You know, they knew this was a problem and they had not gotten around to doing anything about it. Well, you know that they're going to do something about that now. Now, for those of you that are just now coming on, there has been another plane crash, this one in Northeast Philadelphia. It crashed, I think, into a mall, is what they're saying. And some of the video that's coming out of it is horrific. It looks like the plane was on fire when it struck the ground. Obviously, a huge fireball once it struck, because it was coming at a very steep angle, almost straight in. Now, everybody's saying Mexican air ambulance. From what I can tell, this air ambulance belonged to Jet Rescue, which is based out of Miami. I mean, I'm looking at a picture of the airplane on their website. But yeah, oh, okay, I see here. I'm looking down at the bottom. MedJets SA. SA stands for Sociedad Anónima, which means they're under a Mexican AOC. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So this is they have offices in Miami and in Mexico. That's what it is. Now, it's very likely that there were a whole lot of things that contributed to this. Let's hope it was a terrible accident. But again, I just want to say that, for at least 72 hours after something like this happens, we should not start um, speculating on, things like terrorism, whatever. I don't think that's likely in this case. The most likely thing that I would say from this particular event in Philadelphia is, oh my goodness, yeah, is that it was the maintenance issue, something like that. So I think the most important thing we can do is to pray for those people who were injured and for the families of those who were lost, and pray that our country will be protected from things like this going forward. And that's the most we can do. That's the most important thing to do, right? So, folks, we've got like 3,000 people online. I'm going to be posting videos over at chuckholton.com. I can't show you the videos of this on the live because of the way YouTube's algorithm works. If I post anything that's not my live, that's not my face talking, it pretty much guarantees that the video will get demonetized. So you can go over to chuckholton.com and you can see some of those videos. If they are graphic videos, if there's anything graphic I put up over there, I'm going to have to make it, for subscribers only, just so some random kid doesn't get on there and see it. Okay, you're going to have to, yeah. So just this breaking news out of Philadelphia. The governor of Pennsylvania says that he is being briefed on this. So 6 people were aboard the small plane now. Hundreds of firefighters and first responders on the scene. It's occurred about 6:30 p.m., which would have been 7:30 Eastern time. They haven't confirmed how many fatalities on the ground, if any. I can guarantee you there's a couple, because there's videos going around of bodies on the ground and people on fire. And those people, uh, I mean, it's amazing. That brings back some very bad memories for me. So this was a Learjet 55, fairly old aircraft that had been flying a lot over the last few days, all over the place. So the FAA has released a statement. Yeah, it's interesting because shortly after the crash happened, the FAA put out a statement that said there were only 2 people on board. Now they're saying there were 6 people on board. And as I said, the flight radar is not showing the flight. It doesn't show that it actually even went to Philadelphia. And so I don't know exactly what that means. But normally on my app, it would show that this thing took off. Maybe I just have to upgrade or something. I don't know. But there are, this thing struck, yeah, full fuel, large medical oxygen tanks. Yeah. Theo, thank you for that. Actually, a plane going 500 miles an hour straight into the ground is going to make a giant fireball just from the fuel that's on board. The Jet A is, you know, flammable enough. It's going to make a big fireball. It's essentially a missile. And for this thing to come plummeting out of the sky at that kind of angle says there was something really, really wrong with the aircraft well before it hit the ground. I mean, it wasn't like they were trying to glide in and make an emergency landing. This thing came almost straight down at a very high rate of speed. So fast, in fact, that, like I said, they were speculating on Newsmax that it might have been a munition. It might have actually been a missile, which is highly unlikely, obviously. But it looked like one in some of the videos that has come out. The Ring camera video that showed the crash shows this thing just like a bolt of lightning out of the sky. It's crazy, crazy. And so there certainly was an explosion. It, I mean, the explosion when they hit the ground, that's not even surprising. But again, just be careful. Even though this, small plane crashes are not that uncommon. There are any number of small plane crashes in the United States every year. This would qualify as a small plane crash. And if it weren't for the other plane crash 2 days ago, which was not a small plane crash, but an actual commercial aircraft, we probably would hardly have noticed this one. So just, I'm watching on X and on social media where, people are saying, America's under attack. Well, yeah, let's not go that far yet, okay? Not quite, not yet. It's not like it's impossible. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a video in the next couple days about Russia's asymmetric warfare against the West and how they got caught putting explosive packages or flammable packages on airplanes that subsequently caught fire. Fortunately, those planes happened to be on the ground when they caught fire over in, I think, Germany or, no, it was a Eastern European country. But it was like a FedEx airplane, it was a cargo aircraft. Big one, good size, the same size as a jetliner. And it caught fire on the ground, and it turned out it was a package that was booby-trapped that was placed on the plane by Russia. Now, again, I want to be very clear about this, because one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of people that watch these videos don't actually listen to what I'm saying. And a lot of people that watch these videos, even if they listen to what I'm saying, don't have very good comprehension. So I want to make it very clear. I am not in any way insinuating that this was a terror attack. I'm not in any way insinuating that these two events are connected. There's a non-zero chance that something like that could happen. Sure. Always. Always. And one thing we do know is that Russia is certainly engaging in asymmetric warfare against the West, trying to cause bad things to happen across the West. And maybe at some point they find out that they did things like that. Irene Trujillo is saying, do you think cartel will put traps? They have been warning, Irene, American citizens not to go near the border fence with Mexico, because there is some threat that they picked up, some kind of static or chatter on their intelligence collection that is warning that the Mexican cartels may begin to put improvised explosive devices along the U.S. border fence to try to take out Border Patrol, most likely. I mean, we've already seen where they have shot at Border Patrol that was patrolling along the fence just in the last few days. While I was down there, that was happening. They shot at a couple of American hikers who were on the American side of the fence, the U.S. side of the fence, in a sort of a botched robbery attempt, I think. But so, do we need to worry about cartels? Yes. Would I speculate that the cartels put an explosive device on a medical jet, even though it was based out of Mexico? Like I say, looking at the history of this aircraft over the last week, it hasn't spent a lot of time in Mexico. It's gone to Haiti. It's gone to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Albuquerque. So it's been flying around a bunch, but not necessarily, not necessarily hanging out in Mexico a whole lot. Okay. So if they were going to attack us, it's not going to be these small little planes. It would be at a much greater scale. Yeah, it just depends. I think that now, did I happen to mention sometime before the election that the next 4 years were going to be lit, that they were going to be busy? There was going to be a lot of unrest. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be protests. There's going to be riots. There's going to be crazy stuff happening across the United States. Now, I didn't have 2 plane crashes in 2 days on my bingo card, but just keep in mind that there are people out there who definitely want to create chaos and havoc in the United States. But there are also things that just happen. There are also things that they're just accidents. And accidents happen. And we have to be careful not to, number one, start to conflate the two, start to try to see everything that happens through the lens of there was some intentional event by our enemies. Okay. Sometimes you got to look at something and go, that's an unfortunate event that happened, and probably nothing more. So we just have to, again, try to keep a calm and reasonable mind when we see these things. And that was the reason I wanted to come on here, because I'm not going to be the guy who's out there screaming about conspiracy theories. There's plenty of people you can follow if that's what you're looking for. But I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the voice of reason. I want to be the voice of truth that tells you the facts, tries to find some things that maybe are not being reported. So, for example, when the plane crash happened 2 nights ago, I think I was one of the first journalists, if not the first journalist, to point out that the tail number on the helicopter told us that that was a priority air transport, PAT. It was from a squadron because they tried to recruit me to fly for that squadron when I was flying helicopters back in the day. And the PAT, the Priority Air Transport Squadron, is in charge of flying important people around Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. And so I point, when I heard when they first released the radio call from the tower to the helicopter, and he said PAT 25, I was like, wait, that's Priority Air Transport. And so I reported that on the live that I did on CBN, and I believe I was the first one to actually bring up that little factoid. Now, that's not to beat my chest. That's just to say that this is what my intention is with this channel. I'm trying to bring you information and dig a little deeper and find a little bit more that you're not just going to get on the evening news, to give you a better sense of the reality of the situation. When and wherever possible, I'm going to go there myself, and I'm going to report from the ground and give you the sense of what's happening from firsthand. And that's why, we're trying to get to the point where we can fund this ourselves through locals. You go to chuckholton.com or through YouTube, whatever. But I just want to point out, we should be prepared for unrest, uncertainty, accidents even, or intentional chaos that's brought upon our country. And that was the reason that I put out my book, Death of Civilization. Because the book is really about how to prepare your family and your neighborhood to be more resilient in times of crisis. And if you recall, if those of you have been following me for a while, I actually released that part of the book as just a PDF file before I actually came out with the book. But when I finished, I realized, I kind of have to explain the problem a little better. So the first half of the book is just talking about the issues that we are seeing around the world and what we can expect in the future as we see this sort of thin veneer of civilization wearing away in our culture to the point where you're going to see more and more unrest, more and more anger, et cetera, happening around the globe. So if you haven't got a copy of Death of Civilization, I used to have the book up here. I guess there it is. Death of Civilization. There's what the book looks like. You can get it on Amazon if you haven't got one yet, or you can just become a supporter over at chuckholton.com at Locals there, and you can still download it for free off of Locals. So if you haven't gotten a chance to do that, please do. All right, please make sure you hit the like button, folks. I'm going to leave it there for now. If there's any other breaking news, come here first, and we'll try to go through this together. I feel like I learn as much from you guys in times when we're looking at breaking news like this, because we've got thousands of people that are out there. They're listening to me with one ear, and they're out there Googling stuff and looking at stuff on the web with their other ear, and they're putting it up in the chat. So it's helpful. And I appreciate this community more than you know. So thank you very much for being a part of it. And I appreciate all of you. Let's just say a prayer. I think we should pray for this, for the families that have been affected by this. Lord God, we just come to you right now and just humbly ask for your presence. Lord, we ask for that peace that passes all understanding. I pray for people who are fearful, that are watching right now, that they would feel your peace. They would cry out to you, and you would come to them and be their God and be their Savior and be their peace. Lord, that we know that there are families tonight who are hurting because they've lost loved ones from the plane crash 2 days ago and from this event tonight. There are people who are injured, who are suffering, people who have lost their homes or lost, property, businesses because of what's happened. And so I pray, Lord, that you would make them whole as best as can possibly be done. I pray, Lord, that you would cause people to look to you when there's uncertainty around them, that they would learn to pray first and not be afraid. I pray that you would give us a spirit of discernment, Lord, that you would help us to have understanding and wisdom so that when we see what's going on around us, we'll be able to read between the lines. We'll be able to sort through the propaganda that's thrown at us and all of the people who desperately desire to make themselves greater by coming up with some sort of conspiracy theory about what happened, just for the clicks. I pray that you'd help us to see through all of that and be able to understand the truth of what's happening around us. And I pray, Lord, that throughout whatever happens in our lives, that we would learn to trust you more every day. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, folks, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you.